Welcome to the April 2025 business meeting of the Madison DX Club. And we'll start out on the agenda by asking our treasurer, Jim Hugo, to give us an update on our balance in our treasury.
There you go. It's 16-12-40 right now.
Great. It sounds like you were not invested in the stock market, so we were.
Алло, девушка. Я тебя не слышу. Ты не понял? Я не знакомлюсь. Разговаривать, девушка.
KN7K.
Is that who it is? Okay, I can. There. Quieted that down. So I guess maybe they had problems with the stock market and we're reacting. So any anything on DX, Bob? You mentioned that you have been a little out of pocket and haven't had much of a chance being on. So tell us what you know, and then others, please jump in. Ed was talking earlier about some 6-meter activity this afternoon, so that might be something that other people have experienced.
Okay, I got a few news items. We funded VU4AX. They finally ended at the end of March 22nd, I think, and that was on Andaman Island. And they had about 66,000 queues. Unfortunately, conditions weren't all that great for North America while they were on, and they only worked 7% of North America. But I made quite a few contacts with them, and so that's the way it goes when the propagation's up and down. Other expeditions that were pretty busy was 3B9 JD Rodriguez Island. They ended up with 79,000 contacts. And we had Elvira, our Italian gal, who's man, she's really an amazing gal, out there by herself running all these expeditions. Although she had a lot of young men with her at the time that she was training, some future amateur radio DXers. But from the Comoros, she ended up with 83,000 queues, so that was pretty good.
Oh.
Most of you, I'm sure, have heard now the news on Mount Athos from Sugar Victor 1 Gulf America /A for Athos. There was a big hullabaloo about them. Somebody who was not too happy about them operating from that location called the police there, and they got called into the station and were told to stop operating. But when they presented all their documents to the police, the prosecutor said that there was no problem. But the fact is that they ended their operation early, sadly. Most of us who worked them got them on 40 and 17 and 30. That's where most of their contacts were. And the great news is that the other day, the DXCC desk approved them for accounting for DXCC. So that helped me on my DX challenge. I appreciate that. They did about 20, they made 13,000 contacts though, and about a quarter of them were North America. So we're grateful to that. And that was Marty, OH2 Bravo Hotel, and it was Adrian, KO 8 SCA. Yeah, it was a good crew. They did a good job. It's just a shame that they had to cut it short. Anyway, the full story on that has not completely been told so far. Adrian is going to be at Visilla, the International DX Convention, coming up, I think on the 11th, I think they begin, 11th through the 13th, out in Vasilla, California. He's going to be on the program there, and he's going to give the full report on what transpired at Mount Athos. And I'm not going to be in Vasilla. I'm not traveling anywhere. I can hardly get out of the house or around the house. I'm so banged up. But as I recall, if I'm not mistaken, not too long after the convention, they put all these programs online. So we should be able to check into that. So that should be interesting. Looking at what's coming up on the bands, I don't see a lot of really, high profile HFD expeditions to report on here. 6 meters is another story. There's going to be some interesting things on 6 coming up a little later in the season. I think it's a bit too early now, beginning of April, to report on these. So I'll save that for our May program. But one thing I do want to report on is, we often talk about ourselves here in W9 land as especially in Wisconsin here, as being in the black hole of DXing, that's for sure. But I just want to give you a little bit of heads up on what can be done here by some of our neighbors down in northern Illinois. The results and remember, in January, we had a WC3W Mark give us a whole talk on CQ a DX marathon. So the results for 2024 are out now, and the winner in the Unlimited World Contest was K9EL, John Sweeney, down in Schaumburg, Illinois. So it can be done, boys. It can be done. And just to remind you how the scoring goes in that, it's the number of CQ entities you can work on 160 through 6, plus the number of CQ zones you can work. So John's score, the top score in the world for unlimited, was 318. And so just to show you that wasn't some fluke there, okay, some of his neighbors down in northern Illinois, like W9ILI, John Holmes in Morris, Illinois, came in just below John at 315. And Barry Cohn, N2BJ, also in northern Illinois, in New Lenox, came in at 314. So here's 3 guys who were some of the top scorers, I don't know, 100 miles south of me in northern Illinois, who took away some pretty good scores from the CQ DX marathon.
And Bob,
yes, sir.
one thing I'd add about John K9EL is he did that on a city lot in Schaumburg.
Yeah, I know. I've been over there, and boy, I tell you, John K9EL is one heck of an operator. He is really talented. So, I'm what I'm thinking about is, I'm going to give John a call, and I'm going to invite him to give us a program. And what was the big secret, John? How did you do this? How did you win this from that city lot? And I think he's got a stepper or he's got some kind of stepper on a not very tall tower. And also I think that one works on 40 meters. But I think he made quite a few contacts on the lower bands as well. So it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about John's station, about his operating habits, and maybe he'll drop some secrets on us. I don't know. Anyway, as I mentioned, I've been kind of out of commission this last month, and I haven't done very much in the contests. I know the CQWPX contest just ended the end of March here. And I wonder if anybody has anything to report for us on other DX or on other contesting results. No other contesters? Ted, you doing any DXing? Canine IMM?
Well, yes,
Ted took a break.
I did
Yeah?
work the WRL CW DX contest.
How was that?
Not bad. Made about 2,700,000 or so, something like that, points.
That's
2,020
wonderful.
QSOs. It wasn't as nice as
Yeah.
last year, though. That was just the most amazing contest ever for ARRL CW.
So you weren't in the CW WPX, huh? That was the sideband contest, by the way. You guys do that on for the CW one in May? Ted or Gary, you operate that contest?
No,
I have. I got on for the WPX sideband, but I only made just playing around a couple hundred contacts. I do like the CW one, but it's Memorial Day weekend, and just being inside on the radio one on Memorial Day weekend, if the weather's nice, it's just not something I'm really interested in doing. I guess the only real interesting DX I made Review 2 or Review 4 and got him on a couple of new bands and a new mode, but I worked Antarctica on 160 about 2 weeks ago. That was kind of neat.
Oh, that's who I've been chasing. You talking about DP0 GVN?
Yeah, that's the guy. He was showing up every night for a couple nights, and I think I got him the third night.
Oh, good for you. Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
He's yeah, actually, that's something I should have mentioned, Gary, now that you bring him up, because he's been showing up not only on 160, but he's been spotted on quite a few days on 6 meters in Europe. So, boy, watch out for him in the coming months. That would be great to work in Antarctica for me, anyway.
That'd be great.
On 6 meters. Yeah, it sure would be. So, anybody else?
Yeah, the only DX I worked of significance is 9M6NA in East Malaysia on 160 meters. Not very far, but it's a new country for me. The interesting part about it is his signal levels were so low, most people couldn't even hear him. And that's band conditions. And when I monitored these signals with a software-defined radio waterfall, didn't even exist. And perhaps the only reason I managed to working was because I was using acoustic filtering to dig up the signal from below the noise floor. So, and that signal from East Malaysia was also copied by N4IS over there in Florida, I believe. So there are techniques to make the best of bad conditions, shall we say. But yeah, that country brings me up to my 160 meter total 99. So I'm just looking for that last one to get to the ton. That's my excitement for the day.
Very good. Very good.
The expeditions recently to Christmas Island and Cocos Keeling were a bit of a disappointment. I managed to work them on 80 meters, but 160 is impossible. I'm not sure whether it's because they had a poor setup or whether it's just bad conditions overall, which did not help at all. Anyway, that's my input.
Adrian, you know, North America was listening for those guys, but as far as I know, there were no QSOs with them to North America. It was a great disappointment to a lot of us.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't work them from Australia, we shouldn't feel too bad.
No, that's right.
Um,
And I'm one of the more powerful stations here in Australia, so it's very difficult.
That's for sure.
on the subject of 6-meter DX, I've got an SDR set up and so I can monitor FT4, 3 different FT8 frequencies, the CW calling frequency and the SSB calling frequency and Q65-30 all at once. And there's a remarkable amount of stuff going on that isn't all on 50.313. In particular, when the band gets real crowded with Europeans, the secret weapon is to go up to 50.323. And that's where folks go when the band gets crazy. Also, there's a fair amount of FT4 action. Europeans seem to like that because it's fast. So now's the time to start listening for that stuff.
On 50.318, right.
50, 313, 323, 318
Yeah.
for FT4. There's stuff going on that you wouldn't necessarily think. A lot of action on Q65-60. Surprising amount. That's a very weak signal mode, so there's possibilities of some real DX there.
So Ted, you're using Q65 on 6 meters?
Say again?
Are you using Q65 on 6 meters?
I have.
Boy, you know, I could use a little tutorial on that. Maybe that's something you'd maybe that's
Ted,
something you'd be willing to do for us.
Ted, are you using Q65A alpha?
Yes,
Okay.
Q65A.
Okay, because yeah, for 6 meters. Okay.
One interesting thing about Q65 Easy Mode C is that it works in Aurora. Normally use sideband, of course, but because of the C version spreads the tones out further, this frequency shifting doesn't cause as much problems. And I've made a few contacts using Q65 on Aurora, and I even decoded Alaska. I got one decode from Alaska during an Aurora, which is pretty amazing.
So lots of exciting stuff going on, I think.
Yeah, Ted, maybe next meeting, like you did when the new version of FT8 came out, you just do a 5 or 10 minute thing on this during the meeting.
Well, I think that could be worked out.
Okay. Yeah. It'll keep Bob
Better
happy.
a slide or two.
Okay, any other DX news people want to share?
I just have one little tidbit, and just out of the blue here about a month or so ago, I got an email from a guy, and you guys probably know the whole story behind this. I got an email from a guy in the Netherlands who was kind of the default QSL manager for the Sudan expedition that happened, if I remember right, was October, something like that. Anyway, long story short, I got an email from this guy saying, because of the circumstances, you're in the log, but you and a whole bunch of other guys, I didn't get the envelope and the $3 or whatever it was I sent to the guy. Could you do it again if you still want the card? So long story short, I was happy to, and it's supposed to be on its way if it's not laying up in the mailbox right now for number 314 for me. So I was pretty happy.
Very good.
Excellent. So just to cover a couple other things on the agenda real quickly. Our minutes are always, available on our website and along with program information. But probably even more important is information about our past programs, our YouTube channel. We've got quite a few subscribers. If you haven't, when you go on there, just subscribe. It just makes our channel a little more visible. We certainly are not anywhere near influencer level where we could actually earn money for the club. I think we'd have to grow like, 10,000 times in size in order to do that. Nevertheless, it's always good to see that people are subscribed and find out when we have new programs out. And we have all of our programs there. We will have our business meetings like this on for a few months, and then we'll just take them off. But the programs themselves will keep on until YouTube says we have to get rid of some of them, but they haven't done that at all. Also on our webpage is information about joining or renewing your membership, and it has information to get the money to our treasurer, Jim Hugo. So that's kind of the regular meeting agenda stuff. I don't think we have any issues with our systems that we have, so those are all good and in good shape. Does anyone have any projects that they're planning on for the spring and summer? We did hear about Scott moving from his freezer basement upstairs, but does anyone else have any programs to improve or modify their stations that they'd like to share?
I would note that I did not get my ground rods in the ground last fall, so I'm still planning on doing the grounding circumference around the house, and that'll happen this spring, probably in May. So it's all been sitting in the garage staring at me like I should be doing something with it.
Well, one of those big, and maybe you have one or can borrow one, those hammer drills are a thing of beauty when it comes to driving ground rods, especially if you have gravel and stuff like that. It just can cut through that stuff like butter. That was a real lifesaver for me a few years ago.
I'm old school. I have a fence post pounder, so I get to slam it down that way.
Well, it's kind of like a little tiny fence post driver that you put on the hammer.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
The worst part with that, having done some of them, is you have to start up on a ladder if you're doing it with a maul. One hand, so you're holding on a ladder. If you got an 8-foot ground rod, unless you got some magic way to levitate yourself, it's a rough slog to do that. I'd sure recommend the SDS hammer drills.
Yeah.
My trick is to drive them in at an angle. I mean, really, you're getting most of the activity from the ground rod from the top couple of feet, so you don't have to pound it in straight. You can just pound it in at an angle. It'll work better. Plus, you can stand there on the ground.
The way I pound them in, a bunch of them going crooked anyhow, so I guess it's.
Yes. Yeah, you can have all the intention of getting them in straight, but you get them in however you can.
You can rent the SDS hammer drills from a number of the U rental shops if you got a good Ace Hardware or something, but they may not have the ground rod driving attachment. You can use a 1/2 inch socket if you have the SDS bit, and then a socket that maybe you don't care too much about. But
Yeah.
that's another way to drive them if they don't have the actual ground rod attachment.
It's a good thought. Thank you.
Yeah,
There was
that's right.
actually-
You know, I live in, go ahead.
There was actually a government study a few years ago about ground rods and using banding, laying flat in the ground in a trench. Actually, part of my ground field is built that way, using
Interesting.
banding that radiates out from the tower bases for 50 feet or so.
Yeah.
I
Well,
live in
if
Rock
you-
County, which
if you get up on top of
Rock-
mountains, they don't
Sorry.
drive in ground rods. They lay them horizontal.
Yep.
It's suggested.
When I worked at Channel 20 up on Rib Mountain in Wausau, clearly you're on a solid chunk of granite, and that's the way we did it. The grounding was it just ran down the sides of the hill.
Yep.
What else could you do?
Yeah. Now, unless you're into fracking and explosives.
Yeah, even though it was a state agency, the guys in Madison kind of frown on that. They have no sense of humor, the suits, you know?
Yeah, that's always the case. All right, we'll call this meeting to a close. I'll stop the recording.